Yom Tov. Today is April 5th, 2019. It's Friday, and this is Messianic Moment Ministries with yours truly, Stephen Bruck. Being Friday, of course, we're going to be discussing the Parashah, the specified reading in the Torah for this weekend, which is called Tazria. And this Parashah deals exclusively with two forms of impurity. A woman's impurity as a result of birth, and the impurity of a skin disease, which is generally identified as leprosy. Now, a woman is unclean after giving birth due to the bodily excretions that occur, and these are discussed actually later in chapter 18. And there's a specified time for her to remain in that state after the birth of a boy, and another time period if the child is a girl. Please, don't ask me why there is a different time for each, because I have no idea. I just put it down to being one of those laws that is considered chukim. These are laws which must be obeyed, but we can't ever understand why. There are also instructions regarding the breaking out of a skin disease, which, as I said before, is generally interpreted as leprosy. The Hebrew word used for this disease is tsarat. Now, in both cases, since the person is unclean, they are removed from the camp for these specified time periods. Once that time period is over, they are then to offer a sacrifice so that they can then rejoin the camp. Now, in the case of tsarat, the Kohen must first examine the person to ensure that whatever breaking out on the skin happens is not communicable. Now, the arguments made for these instructions deal on one of two sides. There's the one argument that these are given for health reasons, and the other is that they are strictly Levitical, meaning ceremonial or religious. The health arguments are fairly simple to comprehend. I mean, if someone has a communicable disease, such as some of the forms of leprosy are, then it makes sense to remove them from the general population. Duh. But with regards to the Levitical reasons, there's also the Torah, which is clear that no one in a state of uncleanliness or with any kind of physical deformity is allowed in the sanctuary. Now, it should be noted that these impurities and these instructions relate to sanctuary service and being able to go to the sanctuary, and not necessarily with everyday activities not related to the sanctuary. I believe what we should take away from this Parsha is that God has His reasons for giving us the instructions in the Torah, and we don't need to know why. I have made this argument many times during the life of this ministry of mine, and will no doubt repeat it again and often. As the line from the famous poem, Charge of the Light Brigade goes, "Theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die." Now, I'm not suggesting that we should either obey the Torah or cash in our chips, but I do believe we are to obey not because we understand God's reasons, but only because God said we should. He tells us over and over and over again throughout the Bible that when we obey Him, we will live. And that doesn't just mean live now, that means live eternally. So, maybe we shouldn't have sexual relations with a woman during her time of Nidah. Again, this is in chapter 18. Because some studies show that Jewish women who obviously follow this instruction have a lower incidence of cervical cancer. That's good news, and certainly good reason for obedience to that instruction. But what if there was no study? What if there was no relationship in the health arena at all for this particular form of abstinence? Does that mean we should say God made a mistake? Of course not. God doesn't make mistakes, but we sure do. Oh yeah. And the biggest mistake we make, in my opinion, is trying to understand why God gives us these instructions. Human beings have this unquenchable thirst for knowledge, which, in and of itself, is a good thing. But, just like too much of any good thing is not good, when we begin to pridefully believe we now understand why God gave us these instructions, well, I think we're asking for trouble. And here's my reason for saying this. Based on my experience and understanding of human nature, Once we think we know the reason for being told to do something, if we do not really want to do that something, we can rationalize reasons for ignoring that rule. In other words, if I really don't want to, I will make an excuse why I don't have to. And knowing the why for the rule just makes it easier to create that excuse. Bottom line is this. There are health-related and Levitical justifications for the instructions God gives dealing with impurity. And the truth is that if someone doesn't want to obey, any excuse is just as good as any other excuse. You know, it's the one, there's a story, this isn't in the written section, but I just thought of this, remember this story. There's a story about a guy trying to sell very expensive radio equipment to a man who has a radio station way, way, way out in the mountains. So the station pays for him to fly out there. He makes a big pitch to the guy, and the guy says, look, I really like everything you say, but I'm not going to buy it. And the man says, well, you have every reason to buy it. Why won't you? And the radio station operator says, well, my dog died last night, and I just can't make a decision. So the guy goes back, tells his boss it's a big waste of money. A few days later, the radio station operator calls the man and says, hey, come on back up here. I'm ready to buy. Salesman jumps on a plane, goes up there. They set the deal up. It's a multi-million-dollar deal. They set it up, and then afterwards the salesman says, look, I'm sorry. I just need to ask you, what changed in the last couple of days? I mean, your dog died. You're not upset about that anymore? And the radio station man said, nah, my dog didn't die. The guy says, what? Well, why'd you tell me that? And the station operator said, well, actually, I had somebody who was thinking of buying the station. And I talked to him, and we couldn't come up with a deal. So I figured, well, if I'm going to keep the station, I might as well upgrade it with your equipment. So the salesman says, well, that makes sense, but why did you tell me your dog died? Why didn't you just tell me the reason? And the operator owner smiled and said, son, if I don't want to do something, any excuse is as good as another. And that's really the way it is with the humans. If we don't want to do what God said we should do, we can come up with any excuse. But we have a choice. We can obey and choose life. We can disobey and choose death. God has given us the right to decide where we spend eternity. And whether we understand His reasons for giving any specific instruction or not doesn't matter to God. He knows what is in our hearts and minds. So say what you want and make any excuse you want. It can be logical, it can be medical, it can be legal. It can all be justified by any one or all three of these. But no matter how you justify your excuse for ignoring God's laws and instructions, it won't make any difference to God. It won't make any difference to God. So, thank you for being here. And if you like what you've heard, please share me out. Help this humble little ministry to grow. Please also don't forget to subscribe using the icons in the corners here. If I get enough subscribers to this YouTube channel, they give me a little bit of money for advertising, and I use that to purchase the shipping, to pay for shipping, so I send my books to foreign countries. Also, please don't forget to go back to the website, go in the right-hand margin there, the subscribe button, click there also, because I don't always do a video. You know, and I really do appreciate your being here, honestly, and please, your comments are always welcome. Just ask, be nice. So again, this being Friday, I wish you all a very, very big and wonderful Shabbat Shalom. And until next time, L'hitrot, V'Baruch Hashem.